think that's fair enough to
Yeah.
say without completely derailing tonight's show.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we're very excited to be here. We've got some amazing guests today. And for anyone who maybe still needs to give holiday gifts to people, you might be inspired by some of the people on the show today. Um, yeah, but let's just kick it off with a little bit of news as we wrap up this year.
All right, so today I found something very special. It's a Kickstarter. It only has 3 days left to go, and it's called Cat Knights, collectible 54 millimeter miniatures. Millimeter, not meter. Oh my god, the tallest cat knights ever. 54 millimeter miniatures. So these are the cutest little cat miniatures that are, as you can probably guess, dressed up like knights. They have available for you the cat knight Ferran the Destroyer, William Tallis, Sir Kittingham, and Meowmorant, which these are just a few to name a few. One's in a kit, one's in a kilt. William Tallis is in a kilt, and he is so cute. He's a Scottish fold. So again, this is Cat Knights, and it is currently on Kickstarter. It's being produced by Blood Carrot Knights, and it only has 3 days left to go. They're already fully funded. They were funded within an hour. So if you want a cat knight, you better go get one before they're gone.
I popped the link in the chat for anyone who's interested. It's adorable.
Check them out.
Okay, so Wizards of the Coast added the actual Three Dragon Ante game to Drive Through RPG, and it's a free download. So for those of you who play Dungeons and Dragons, you probably know Three Dragon Ante is one of the games that you can play. Well, this download gives you 72 cards. It comes with instructions. And so, if you're playing in your game and you just don't really feel like having a campaign that time, you can sit and, relax and play a little Three Dragon Ante. So check it out. You can find it on Drive Through RPG. And like I said, it's a free download. So have some fun.
Yes. So today we have an awesome show for you. We have some amazing guests, and the theme of the show is dice. Everything about dice. And I have seen some of the works that our guests have done, and they are quite amazing. So let us bring them on in.
Yay!
So we can introduce them.
So we have, of course, Gil Ramirez, the Vlogsmith. We have Rose Southerd from the Thornless Rose, and we have our own Fabled 42's Taryn Hackett. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Hey, well, let's just go around and let everyone in the chat know who you guys are. Taryn, let's start with you.
My name is Taryn Hackett. You can catch me here on Fable 42 every Monday and Legends of Shao Gal. Sometimes you can catch me on Fridays playing Wizards of Ukador. I will be on Fox Talks this Friday, which is going to be fun, and I'm totally not going to harass Ronan, which we all should. And I'm on Instagram at Valrook, Valrouk. I'm a generally creative human, cat lover, and a DM. And I make dice, and I'm getting better at making dice, and so that's a thing.
All right, Gil, how about you?
Well, my name is Gil Ramirez. I am known as Gil the Vlogsmith just about everywhere, and I hand forge dice. I hand forge them out of most of the metals that I work with are ferric, so steels of some sorts and whatnot. But I've dabbled into titanium. I've dabbled into brass, copper. I'm now starting to get into silver for the Kickstarter and all that, and it's been fun trying to warp my mind around the different mediums, because not every metal is the same. Some are softer, some are much more harder. I've even made Damascus dice and all that, so it's been great. I love the journey. I love the experience of learning new stuff, even though I've already been somewhat well versed in the steel world, and then just branching out from there.
Awesome. And Rose, and for those of you who don't know, Rose is coming to us at 1:00 in the morning in the UK. So thank you.
Bless.
Yes, thank you so much.
Good afternoon, evening. Yeah. Apologies for any yawning in advance. I'm a leather worker and resin artist, so I make accessories, dice trays, bags, but all about the dice really. So
And that's actually how I met Rose. Is I have bought a lot of her dice. They are beautiful and amazing.
thank you.
Okay, I guess let's just dice making. I mean, of course, we're all here because we love tabletop gaming. Dice is a big part of, well, it is the central part of our gameplay. But how did you guys go from playing the game to being like, man, I want to make it? Because your dice, they're all three of you, your dice are forms of art. They're gorgeous. They're not just something like, I would be devastated if I lost one. Gil, let's start with you.
Well, so it's funny because I was actually asked by one of my fans if I had an old YouTube. Let's rewind here. I had an old YouTube channel that I was trying to teach beginner blacksmithing, right? And on it, I would add at the very end of the episode, hey, if you want me to do something of your own, challenge me. Just make up something and I'll try to make it. So one time someone asked me to make a D20 and I go, I don't think that's a thing that's possible, in that kind of medium, at least not hand forging it, right? Again, most of the time you see plastic molds of the original Chessex dice and whatnot. And I had to really think about it. I had to stop my entire production of making videos and just think about that. I did the whole, chalkboard thing, scratching it out, wrote it on pieces of paper, wrinkling them, throwing away. And eventually I came up with the idea of creating or equaling two equations, and that is the volume of a sphere with the volume of an icosahedron, which is the D20 shape. And because that's what I started out with. I have to start out with a ball, essentially, and then work that down into a D20 shape. And that was a trick. It was basically a lot of math, a lot of cross canceling and whatnot, and eventually you get to the point where you get the one of the sides, which is up the point from one vertice to another vertice, right, on the D20. And once you have that value on any specific sphere, you can, as large and small as you want to go with it, as long as you get that value, you can interchange them. And that's the key. And then you pretty much just start working, a lot of geometry, and then you start hammering it down. And it's a labor of love, that's for sure. But yeah, I'm glad that someone did, because it's funny too. I made the video and I forgot it. It went 3 years without any kind of views, maybe 20 views maximum. And then on its own, it just went viral. And that's how I eventually I began to get well known because of that. And again, it was a weird circumstances that led up to that point of where I am right now, of just someone sharing it. And then eventually it caught wind, and bigger companies, bigger magazine companies like Laughing Squid, Geek and Sundry, obviously, Tor.com, a bunch of others just started to share and write their own articles about it. And the best part about it was I was on set on my birthday and I had my phone off because I was on set. And the sound guy was literally with the boom going, dude, can you cut off your phone? It's buzzing all the time. And I checked just to make sure that it wasn't anything serious. I'm like, okay, cool. Shut it off. At the end of the day, I come back to 8,000 notifications and I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, I had to sift through, and people message me going, hey, by the way, do you know that your dice is blowing up? And I'm like, oh, no, okay, no, but okay, I guess. So yeah, it's been a weird, I think 5-6 years now or so.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, that's weird when that happens. We're just like, I left it alone, and then it became a monster.
Yeah. And Rose, you also got started with a Kickstarter, right?
But how kind of, yeah. So some years ago I worked for a film TV prop company, and I moved halfway across the country, had to jack that in, and I ended up working on cars. Weirdly, filler, bodywork, paint, it's all the same, just different ways of applying it. It got to the point that it was damaging my mental health, working on my own in the cold, and I quit to do leatherwork for live roleplay. That Christmas, My sister lost her dice. So as a joke, I made something like this.
Oh, cute.
Obviously, this
What-
isn't the one that she's got, and normally they've got numbers on, but this is a blank one, and
Right. Is it a dice bag?
it is a dice bag.
So cute.
Aww.
Amazing.
So
I love it.
after that Christmas, we put it on the internet, and everyone wanted one. Obviously, it takes some hours to stitch something like this together.
Right.
So I designed it into a kit, and that's where the Kickstarter came from.
That
And
is cool.
I then started focusing on tabletop accessories, be it the bags, little leather rolling trays, and then I put my resin casting into dice. So I went from things like little antlers,
Aw.
so they're actual antlers, to
Love it.
you can see that in there.
Nice.
I was gonna
Oh.
say, I love it so
wow.
much. Chunk dice.
So that's obviously the very short version that takes a while to. I haven't got any of the first ones. They're in a box that we don't look in anymore.
The forget me
Um,
box.
Yeah, definitely. The first ones did have a lot more bubbles than that, but that's the very short version, I guess.
Yeah, I'm developing that collection right now of or I should say I have finally breached that period of dice making time. So what happened for me, I have a massive dice addiction. And I started, well, like, and mine was like hopping on Instagram, hopping on Pinterest and seeing like, wait, people make these things themselves too. And I love art anyways. I was an art major and stuff. And so for me, it was like, oh, hey, here's another opportunity and I can make what I want, which is always like, that's the cheapskate in me of like, I don't want to I don't want to yet, because if I can make it myself, maybe I'm okay. And that's cool, right? Well, so I started watching like YouTube videos. That's where it all started anyways. Made like cruddy little test molds. They did okay, enough, and like playing with coloring and playing with pigments and making all the mistakes. Like the very first set I poured, I didn't know resin could do this, but it just to this day has remained a squishy dice.
Ah.
I was so bad. I didn't measure anything. I mean, it was all eyeballed, so like I have since then learned the very big importance of ratios. I think 4 months ago got my master's set, got those polished, and I've been working on getting like pressure pot and everything else situated because I'm the perfectionist and I've got to do it right the first time. It always works that way, by the way. The first time you try something, it always works exactly like you plan it working
Right.
every time. But I finally have it all situated, and so I've started pouring just recently, and I'm making gifts for Fabled 42 peeps to practice for once. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I have like quite this. Some of them are so pretty too, but like I have like this little like the Crown Royal dice bag, just full of happy accidents.
Yeah.
I got a bucket of that too, just a giant bucket. It's almost halfway filled of my scraps.
I mean, your
Happy
scraps
accidents.
can melt down, surely.
Yeah, but you can't really pour it back though. That's the thing.
Oh.
I would need like a mold for that, and I don't have a smelting unit. It's a lot. It's a huge process.
Smelting
Right.
is a monster. I also did some metal and silversmithing stuff in college, and that is just a whole other thing.
Nice.
That's why I'm like just so impressed, because I'm also afraid because I would lose fingers. Can't burn my fingers off with resin.
Right. So
I've been lucky.
yeah, please elaborate on that, Gil. Haven't lost any fingers yet.
Not yet. Yeah, no. I've been doing it for about 20 years now, blacksmithing. But I've been also a mechanical engineer way before that. In fact, so my entire life has been surrounded by metal in general. So machining metal, cutting metal, sawing metal, all that. And I've had plenty of opportunities to lop a limb off or fingers, and I've just been really careful. Same with my eyewear. I always have protective eyewear because you strike something and you don't know where that little spark's going to go. And it's just, I don't like wearing them. I hate them because eventually they get, crud on them, and my eyes try to focus on those and not what's out here. And I realize that over time I'm going to get blind. I'm probably going to go blind in, I don't know, 30 years from now, 20 years from now. I don't know. But right now I'd rather not go completely blind, and so I wear them. But I mean, luckily, again, so far, please 2020, don't mess with me right now.
Again, we have a little over 24 hours to get through.
Yeah. So dice is a very of all the artistic things to be doing, because obviously you all are artists in, you're artists. What was it about dice that you're like, that is how, I mean, obviously, you guys do other things as well. I mean, Rose, you've got, your whole shop has, lots of different things that you're doing, but what was it about dice that you're like, like Rose, you're like, I'm going to try and put foil in this, and Taryn, some of your stuff the same. And Gil, you're like, I'm going to use metal. How did that all come to fruition? Gil, let's just kick it off with you as well.
Well, ultimately, it does fall back on that one time when someone did, challenge me to make a dice by methods of forging. But it evolved, though, because, while I am a blacksmith, and blacksmith typically runs just pure iron or, steel, that kind of thing. Dabbling in other metals that I'm not familiar with was a challenge, and I like challenges. I like to go to those places. And so, and ultimately too, it does help that my fan base can give me feedback, go, we want more of this and maybe not so much this, and I will accommodate that as best I can. But definitely I love, ever since I made the first one, and I made the first one about it was 40 millimeters large, so it's about this big, right, almost 2 inches. I rolled it on my leather tray, and it felt so good. It just had that weird thuddy cluck, and I'm like, okay, all right, it does something here. It's like an ASMR kind of thing. I'm like, okay, I hear you. And so I just decided, okay, well, if I can just bring that smaller to a normal size, then we're in business. And I did, and yeah, I love the feel of it. Some people don't like them because they're too heavy. I think they're just right, and you can make them so that they're not as heavy. Again, the 2-inch one was pretty darn heavy. I broke a table in the video just to show off that I could. It was a giant glass table that I had that a friend of mine was getting rid of. I'm like, oh, let me take that. I'll take that. I'll need it for the video. Because it already had a crack in it. I'm like, perfect. You're already weakened. It'll hopefully fall through and break. And
right. And Rose, what about for you?
I'm a magpie, so I have a way more inclusions and glitters and sparkly things in my workshop than I can ever possibly use, but I still buy more. Sometimes it's whatever I have around me, and I just combine it that way. Other times, like, I really enjoyed doing the Halloween ones. There was a set of prompts all through October. I tried doing Christmas ones, but I got a bit burnt out with Christmas and doing that. Because, there's only so many things you can do. Yeah. But combining ideas into the smallest space, really. And people seem to really like those kinds of concepts.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, for me, it was like I said, well, it was this opportunity, because I loved my favorite Cheswick set was the Borealis. All of them, didn't matter. I was a dice dragon, and I was like, ooh, shiny jewels. Yes, give me. I also collect glass, 1800s era glassware stuff, because I love that stuff. So a lot of my dice have a clear element to them, just because there's just something to it. There's definitely a dice dragon in me, and I'm like, it is gems, and I love it. But for me, it was I had, at the time, I'd been in an artist block. I'm an acrylic painter, and I do inking and stuff, and I had just hit this hard block, and I had zero inspiration. It'd been 6 months since I'd done anything. And so it was okay, new medium, completely new process. I also have a tremor that's been getting worse as I've gotten older. And so painting and drawing for me has gotten really difficult at times. And pouring resin with shaky hands, not always the best thing either, but it's a little more forgiving than when you're trying to do fine detail. So it was something that I could do. It didn't take, I mean, really, you have a set amount of time when you're working with resin anyways. So it's a set amount of time, get in there, play with new color combinations and like all of the glitters and the foils. And then like I discovered like glow in the dark pigment. And I was just like, okay, rave kid's about to just come say hi because I can make dice glow in the dark now, you know. But it was just a new art medium that I hadn't been burnt out on yet. And then when they cured properly, I could play with them. And then like, I mean, all of my friends that were into dice, like there's the positive reinforcement of like, they really liked it too. And I'm a very giving person. And so immediately my first thought was like, I'm not going to sell dice yet. I'm just going to start making them for people because I'm like, I like to make them happy because they like the thing I made and that makes me happy. I'm going to start doing the opposite of that and start selling soon. But yeah, that's how it started. It was all happy reactions. And then the sound of like homemade dice versus like the plastic Chessex dice. The resin dice have such a nice little click clack. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm telling you, it's the ASMR of just D&D.
Yeah. And the sharp edge dice. There's just something cool about like sleek dice that look, I mean, I don't know. I've elevated myself. Yeah.
Cut your hand using a dice.
Mm-hmm.
So many times.
Yeah, for real. D4? Caltrop D4?
20.
Yeah, you're like,
not 20.
My D4 are crystal D4s now. I don't have the Caltrop. I refuse. Hate them.
Same. No, yeah, same. No joke. Because I actually worry mine end up becoming actual steel caltrops, and I don't want the liability. I really don't. I don't want someone to be like, hey man, show me a picture of their foot with their my D20 stuck in there. Like, oh no.
The only thing that is worse than stepping on a Lego is your caltrop dice.
Ow.
So this is kind of interesting because y'all work with different mediums. Sorry, my computer is very precariously set on some Christmas boxes, so everything is kind of moving. Got the tectonic plates going on right now. How long does it take to make to make it, let's just say a D20, like for each? What is the process and how long does it take to make just one D20?
That's a very good question, actually. So when I first started out, the very first D20 I ever made, it took 12 hours long because, again, I was using the large sphere and I was trying to see how I could best go about it. And you have to hit it a little bit on one side. And when it's hot, like bright orange yellow, you hit it from the top with the hammer. You're also squishing a little bit from the bottom where the anvil is. And so all you have to do is essentially move it 10 times, right? 10 faces, and the other 10 will also get the same amount of movement. But you can only move it a little bit. So the flat, or the roundness, I guess, only has a little tiny flat that you make. You can't get it perfectly triangular the first hit. Because if you tried that, it'll just make it oblong. And you'll be really, really hard pressed to correct that. So it's a lot of like basically just hitting it a little bit here, moving over here, hitting it a little bit here, and just moving and keep that process going, sticking it back into the forge, back in and out. And eventually the little dots on the face will start to grow bigger and bigger, and they'll join each other. And that's where the line between the faces will begin to form. So it started at 12 hours, and then I reduced it after like the fifth one to 8 hours. And now, luckily, I've got the hydraulic press, and it drastically reduced it, so I can make about, I want to say, maybe like 30 in a day. What? And so it's not great, but at least it's a lot better than what it was before. And
I'd say that's.
Oh yeah. So it's the same process.
It's pretty good.
It's the same process of me, squishing it down, but now I can have the machine, because it's all computer numerically controlled and whatnot. I can have it come down to the set diameter. It hits the face perfectly. I can move it over, triangulate it, hit it again, and it hits the exact same distance. And then after I heat it up back up again, and we go in for another heat and another press, and then we do that perfectly the same time every single facet. And now I can do it where there's little to no guesswork involved.
That's beautiful.
Awesome. I love tools.
Friends of mine want me to squish things in it. I'm like, well, there's a whole channel devoted to that. You can just watch that. But I hear you. I'll probably do it. Maybe a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just send me some stuff.
Your entire channel is gonna be all about pressing things, squishing things.
Maybe just dice. Maybe just dice. That's a service I can offer. Send me your cursed dice and I will video it just being done.
Oh my gosh, that is a great idea. Or on your anvil and you just
Yep. There you go.
Let us know if you start dealing and smushing virtual dice, because I can think of a few people that
Roll 20? Let me guess.
We use Vorpal
we've
board.
been using
Okay.
Vorpal. Yeah.
Roll 20 did me wrong on Monday. 3 nat ones in a row, which is I believe
cool.
a 1 in 8,000 chance.
Ouch. Yeah.
Rose, what's your process? Because you do put a lot of stuff in your dice, and
so it's more the build up to making it, because I make all of my molds by hand. So you've got to polish your masters. You get your 3D print and you have to polish every single side so it's like glass.
Yeah.
And then you've got to make the mold for each one. And then the silicone takes 24 hours to cure. You've got to leave it for a few days to make sure it's definitely cured and off gassed and you're not going to get any reactions. So you've got to make the walls. So you've got 2 parts. So you can make this bit, then you have to make that bit. And then once that's cured, you can put resin in it. The putting the resin in itself, it's only sort of 10 minutes or so. You work out what you want to put it in, you mix the resin, you pour it, but then you've got another 24 hours for that to cure and harden. And then you've got to leave it a week before you can sand it and get rid of any of the flashing or any imperfections that are from the mold lines. And then you've got hours of doing that and then polishing it and then inking it.
I think
it's a very long drawn out process.
Yes. That's ditto.
Yeah.
I've managed the molds that I'm using. So that's like my molds, I do the cap, like the flat cap all the way across. So like but yeah, the process is the same. I've found a silicone that cures like in 12. It's actually been really great. But yeah, I mean, it's usually the prep work, like getting all, once you have your molds made, then it's just like, okay, pour, demold, and then like depending on how many molds you have and how many you can fit in like your pressure pot, if you're doing pressure pots, then you can start knocking it out. And that's where I'm at right now, is like, okay, I've got my molds, now I'm just knocking it out. I mean, barring any crazy, the molds that I've been using, these ones actually have done great, because like my first molds, I think I did like the sprue. So like there's different kinds of molds, which is like cap molds, and then like those are the 2 main ones. There's like cap molds and sprue molds, and the sprue molds are the ones that you see like when they pour it, there's like a well in the top of the mold and a stick that goes down into the dice, right? And that's like a lot of people, a lot of dice makers do that. The only reason I don't like that is because you have a whole face that you have to vigorously sand, if not multiple. And that's like the part with resin dice that takes forever, is cleaning it up, sanding and polishing. And if you mess up sanding, you mess up, because if you go too far or you don't use the right grit, you ruin the whole thing, because like one side will be, it's a pain. I've gotten, the ones I've been using now have been really great. Like I don't have as much cleanup, but like the last sets that I did, I think I spent, oh my gosh, like an hour and a half to 2 hours sanding and polishing each. It was like each set. It was
yeah.
Sanding is the worst part of any project, regardless of what it is, what you're doing. I'm in the middle of sanding a bow for my Aloy cosplay, and it's a 3D print.
You're just like,
it's a lot of, it's so much. And I hate it so much. There's all these like nooks and crannies and cracks, but sanding is just the worst.
Like have one of the sets that I just poured, and like this is all the cleanup. Like you probably won't be able to see it. You can kind of tell there's a little bit of cleanup I have to do on this.
Right.
But I am like, hey,
Yeah.
like I pulled this one out and I was like, look at me go. I only have to sand one face. Thank you. And I was like, and you're my new best friend now because I don't have to sand more than one face.
So for all of you guys, it seems like a lot of experimentation goes into what you do. Like Gil, you're working with different metals. Rose, I swear, like the things that you put in your dice and like they come out, it's like, you know, how is it you, for all of you in the different ways in which you make dice, how did you go about realizing like, okay, if I put this thread here and this little foil here, it makes this, or if I do this color, do this, or Gil, you're like, I'm using titanium and brass and all of this. You know, how did that whole kind of experimentation process go to figure out, oh, this is the dice I want to make? Gil, let's start with you again.
For me, the titanium was actually really difficult because I've never really worked with titanium in that fashion. I've cut it, I machined it, and even then it was a really difficult metal. It tends to break carbide inserts, it tends to wear them down quickly. You cannot run it without coolant because if you catch the chips on fire, you can't put it out. You need a type D fire extinguisher to put it out, and it becomes it becomes a huge fire to the point where when this happens all the time, by the way. I don't know. So in the machine world, if you're running titanium, it's
Shit just kept us on fire.
Yeah, it just no. I used to work for a biomedical company. We used to make tiny parts, so a lot of the chips were really fine. And even though we ran coolant, we ran this like oily coolant, you could still just catch them on fire. And so knowing that, I was like, well, how the hell am I going to put this giant chunk of titanium into a forge in which I'm heating it up and hoping that it doesn't just catch on fire? Luckily, the titanium is solid enough, you know, or like it's large enough that it doesn't quite catch. You'd have to make it a little bit finer. You have to make it like much smaller, or you know, chip form or dust form, then it'll catch on fire. But once it catches, you can not put it out. So that was luckily I learned that as part of the process, but I was really I was so scared going into it.
It's a little gun shy.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Because I'm like, I know this stuff. I've worked with this stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
What about the Damascus?
Yeah.
The Damascus steel.
That was definitely a challenge. So I've worked with Damascus before in making smaller objects, little tiny knives and whatnot that I've given to my friends and whatnot, but nothing this large. And what I had to do was make a billet. So you're normally, you know, you're layering the metals, right? And you typically, you try to contrast your metals with like a high nickel content and a high carbon steel content. So the higher the carbon content, the darker it looks. And the higher the nickel content in your steel, the more shinier it looks. And that's why when you see a Damascus blade, it has like the dark and bright, you know, like wood grain look to it.
Right. And for those who don't know what the Damascus steel is, it's when you see the metal, when you see the like the blade or whatever it is, it's got this like really nice, as Gil said, like a wood grain look to it. It's very pretty. It's
gorgeous. Yeah. I didn't really. I wasn't, not that I'm well versed in it or not well versed in it. I just didn't really, I like doing it a whole lot. It wasn't, at least at the time, it wasn't a great payback for what the amount of work that I put into it, right?
Yeah, okay.
So,
I get you.
And this time it was purely an experiment, and it was just like, well, okay, if I can make a billet large enough, and the billet wasn't even clean either, meaning I tried to forge it, and for the most part, most of it stuck, but the ends kind of split. And what happens is if you don't have a clean metal, and if you're not heating it up properly, if you don't have the right reducing atmosphere in your forge, if you don't have flux on it, which produces like anti-oxygen, basically a little anti-oxygen barrier, so there's no scale being formed, all these different elements have to play into the whole thing. And if any part of it is wrong, then you won't have the proper sealing, right? You'll have like a delamination effect. And on the ends of the bar that I had, it started to kind of delaminate. Luckily, I was able to cut it off and use the center bar, and I made about 4 initially for the Kickstarter, right? Just to show them off. And I was surprised. There were also pockets inside the Damascus.
Oh.
And I was able to like of air basically where I didn't quite fuse it right. But luckily the dice where I shaped it went fine. And it was like I cut it off anyway. So luckily I was able to get 4 out of, probably like a 6-inch bar or so. More than I would ask for, to be honest. But now it's the whole process of me trying to get better at making a Damascus billet, having to forge that down and twist it backwards again, and then round it off into a somewhat a round shape, put it on a lathe, cut it, and then make spheres out of it. It's a whole thing. That actually still takes a long time, regardless of the press or not. It takes a long while just to get that whole thing going.
You've
Right.
convinced me that I do not ever want to forge anything ever. I'm not that type of person, Gil.
I teach classes though. You could learn. I teach classes.
There we go.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I think like you gotta have a certain personality.
Right. So Rose, for you with the resin, like you have so many different things that you've experimented with and done, and
Right.
each month you're coming out with new things.
Does that affect like the curing time, the things that you put into it?
It can do. So never things with water. Water reacts badly with most resins.
Fair.
I did back a Kickstarter though that is doing just that. It's like
Tell me, Lindsay.
They're still trying to figure it out. Things have been delayed because they still haven't quite figured it out.
So liquid cores are generally sealed little capsules, and you can put those in, and because it's sealed, you don't get that reaction and issues. If you put things like food colorings that are water based, you tend to get a lot of problems. You can get exothermic reactions where the resin just flash cures in the pot, or it just doesn't do anything at all and it just ruins it. So the important thing is to read your data sheet, which a lot of people don't, as to preferred working temperatures for your product. They're all different. No matter which one you're using, everything is always different things. So always check the one that you're using. Alcohol inks are a very popular thing to color dice with. You can get some really cool drippy effects, but if you put too much in, you end up with it going soft on top.
Oh,
okay.
So it's the right balance of how much colorant you're putting in versus the resin. It just dilutes it, I guess.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people do the Sailor Moon gems with the ink-based colorings. I've seen people take Bic pens and use that instead as a cheap way.
So what have you found like that you either like the best or works the best, or?
I do use a lot of alcohol inks to get the transparent colors, but generally resin dyes or pastes, products designed to color resin, funnily enough, work the best for coloring resin.
Strange.
Who would have thought it?
Right.
Going the legit route. Okay.
Yep.
Noted.
I mean, same. Yeah.
What about like glitters and stuff?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because you have some
beautiful
of yours, like you've got glitters and strands and foils. I'm like looking through what I have here. Yeah.
Again, it's you go to the craft shop and you just see what sparkles at you, or even just wandering around. A lot of the fern dice that I did earlier in the year, that was walking the dog. I just picked up some dried out ferns from the side of the road on the way back, and they ended up in with some lichens and ended up with some really nice druidic type dice with the ferns wrapping around the lichens with glitter. Obviously, you can't not have glitter.
Obviously.
But it's just whatever you see around you can inspire you in so many different ways. I have to say I have a box of small mammal bones in the shed. all
Are you gonna
humanely
start putting
sourced.
bones
Is
in
this
them?
a confession or
No, they're all humanely sourced. I do have real bones. Some of the Halloween ones had them in.
Hmm.
My parents found a collection of dead mammals, rats, moles, voles, all sorts in the new cellar, and also
Ooh.
things like owl pellets that you can get from owl
Oh
sanctuaries.
yeah.
Right.
It does take digging through a lot of unpleasantness. So if you've got a weak stomach, probably not for you. But owls regurgitate things like bone and fur,
Yeah.
which leave a lot of the bones in pristine condition. The skulls get a little bit crushed because, you know, being thrown up does that to you. Um,
As you do.
but
Yeah.
but you do get the really interesting details that you can add. You will get people go, are they balanced constantly?
Oh
And
my
sometimes
god.
it's just, what's the point? It's art. Yes, mostly it's not going to make any difference, but their art, if you're that worried, go buy casino dice.
I was about to say they're just as balanced as any chess set. I
Yeah.
hate to break it to you, that's how they work. Like, because I'm like some of my friends have asked me that. I hate to break it to you, your Chessex dice totally have bubbles in there. You just can't see it because of the way that they pigment it. They do that on purpose because you wouldn't buy them if you could see the bubbles that are in there.
Right.
I am obsessed with balance, and like the dice that I make, I like everything. I've played with dried plants and stuff. Usually the stuff that I use, I check to make sure, like, again, still like a lot of the time, like sulfur free things, stuff like that. That can, anything, again, reading labels, anything that can affect the chemistry of the resin that I'm specifically using. Some react and some don't. I don't know why. I don't want to know. I just know what I need to do. But like, like honestly, especially if you're using pressure pot, like if you're using a pressure pot to cure your dice, there's like next to zero, like they're better off, I promise. And I mean, you're still rolling it around a tray and it's still a completely random chance. The only way you're going to have a perfectly balanced dice is if you get casino dice. Bottom line.
Right. And those aren't going to be as pretty.
No, they won't.
Collectible.
You should just tell people, yes, they're balanced so that you hit as many 20s as
There
possible.
you go.
You can't put
So-
you don't have tiny animal skulls in casino dice.
No.
Okay?
You definitely don't.
That's the question I get so often is, are they balanced? Are they balanced? I'm like, oh my god, and one guy even wanted to argue with me when I stamp my numbers, right? So I'm not removing any metal to stamp them. And they think, well, no, because you're removing a lot more material, like on the 20 than like the 1, right? No material's being removed at all. I'm literally stamping the metal. The metal's just getting indented, so it's still there.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, it's got to be unbalanced. I'm like, well, see, what you don't understand is, like, let's say you have 2 oranges in your hand, right? And you're spinning on a plate that just happens to be like a free dollar, right? And you're having 2 oranges on your hand. You take one orange and you take the peel off that one orange and you put it back there. That's what's going on. You're not really moving or removing mass, you're just moving it slightly. And I tried to, like, okay, did you take physics though? But did you take physics though? And how do you teach that to someone who just doesn't understand that? And yeah, I get that so often.
Right. Yeah.
I do have 3 followers though that are they roll their dice and they actually charted out how far each number has done the whole thing. So I'm like, cool, I don't have to do it. Here you go. Here's literally someone else doing it, and you can see it's perfectly balanced.
I've let the fanatics
I feel like if
work
you're
for me.
right, and I feel like if you're that obsessed with balance with your dice, like maybe D&D's not the game.
Maybe D&D's, yeah, like yeah.
Lost sight of the fun aspect of it.
The dice are not your friend.
No.
Don't kid yourself. They are pretty and we love them.
Yes.
But they will fail you. Ask our DM of Legends of Shao Gal.
Yeah. She rolled
They fail us.
ones in a row. I'm interested, like, what is the most ambitious thing you've tried to do with dice? If that's a thing I can ask. I know, Gil, you tried.
Yeah.
Was it meteors?
Meteorite.
Yeah.
Yep.
So cool.
Space dice.
Space dice.
Space dice.
I remember when you posted about that a while back. I was like,
oh my god, it was okay. I had a buddy in Arizona. He's like, hey, I have this chunk of meteorite. He was like, I say chunk, it was like this big. It was a $5,000 piece of meteorite. Okay.
All right.
And he's like, cool. I want you to make some dice out of it. Please, can you, ship some to, or ship one, make as many as you can. And in order of preference, he said, Matt Mercer, Laura Bailey, and then you get one because you're making one, and I get one because I'm the one commissioning it, and then I'll pay you for your time, et cetera. All that. I'm like, okay. For one, I said, okay, stipulation number one, they may not be made at all because it's meteorite.
Yeah.
And meteorite is very crumbly. At least this one was. It's Campo de Cielo, and it's, if you were to like go into an analogy here, imagine you had a little piece of clay, right? A small little piece of clay, like maybe quarter size, like bouncy ball size. You kind of squish it. You take another one, the same size, different color, and you put it on. You're not kneading it. You're just placing it on. To get another one, different color, place it on top of that. They're sticking together, but you're not kneading them again. You keep doing that over and over and over again, and you pretty much have the composition of a Campo de Cielo meteorite. And you can literally at some point break it all apart, and they'll still be in the little globule forms, because as it's cooling in space over the billions and billions of years, essentially you have like a hot globule that is hot enough but not quite so hot that they fuse together. So they're being attracted by gravity, et cetera, or whatnot, and it's just, they're hot and they cool down slowly, so they have a little bit of adhesion but not quite. And when you cut them through, you find that really quickly. Pieces start to literally fly out. You're like, what the hell's going on? I tried to grind it, blew apart. I'm like, so how the hell am I going to do this? Like, I tried to take it in the forge, it crumbled. I'm like, okay. So everything I'm trying to do here is literally not working. And I can quite honestly and with confidence say that it is the worst material in the universe.
You had, and then you have to remember that it's $5,000.
Oh yeah, no. So
Of
this giant chunk about this big only yielded me 4 dice about that big.
Right.
So if you can imagine
Wow.
all that,
I feel like the return on investment there is a little lopsided.
It's horrible. And people are asking, are you going to do a Kickstarter for meteorite? Hell no, man. I don't want to do any of that.
Done.
Like, I would be losing so much money just on trying to acquire all that meteorite, and then find out that maybe 50% of it is just now trash.
Yeah.
So no.
Rose, what about for you? I mean, no meteorites, I'm assuming, but
what's the most ambitious thing? It's not technically a dice, but I guess Bob was pretty ambitious. Don't know if any of you saw the little floating gelatinous.
Oh wow!
Oh, that is epic! I love it.
Cute.
Oh, I love that so much.
Oh my gosh!
So it's obviously it's not ideal with this light, but there's a
Right.
fully painted floating skeleton in there.
Wow!
So he got made in the summer after I did the first of the gelatinous cube D6s that went down very well on Twitter. And yeah, I guess ambition is where he came from.
How did you do that?
So there's a lot of Warhammer bits in there. So the skeleton itself is a Games Workshop skeleton. I've got a 2-inch cube mold, and then a different mold to make a resin base insert. So with the different shades of green, once you put the base into it and fill it back up again, all the resin just fuses, so you don't see the different pieces.
Gotcha.
You can see the different greens and the shades and the swirls, but you can't actually see that they're 2 different pieces. Somewhere on Twitter there is an entire thread of how he was built, with the base platform and the little skeleton glued to it and all the different bits held in different places. There's even like so we really can't see it, there's a little floating arrow halfway up.
Oh my gosh! Oh yeah, I will be finding this Twitter thread, and
That is epic.
So all of the pieces are attached to a solid piece, but it just looks like they're floating.
Okay.
Love that so much.
So yeah, that's probably the most ambitious piece I've made.
That is amazing. And Taryn, I know you're still,
Yeah.
getting started with all of this. Is there one, or is there something you're like, I have to do this at some point?
Okay, so I would say project-wise, the most ambitious is the one I'm working on right now for the wizards' houses, because I'm making 15 sets of dice, and each of them look the same, consistent across. And then each one of those sets is getting a custom advantage dice for each wizard, which the hardest part for me is trying to characterize each wizard in their own D20 based on the player. It's probably pretty safe to say Ola's is going to be blue. But the craziest thing I've done thus far, so my little sister, when I DM at home, is my favorite player, pretty much. I say that, and if anybody's watching, I'm not sorry. I love her, she's great, but she always, every time we play, she makes like this giant bowl of popcorn and just eats like the whole time. Like there's just constant crunching of popcorn while she's playing here at home. And so I decided like I was going to make her a chunk popcorn D20. And it worked. I didn't think it would work, but it did.
That is special. I love that.
So
Awesome.
like this is probably like, because like all I could think was there's no way to get like, and this is before pressure pot, so I was like, I can't get all the air out. I don't know how popcorn is going to react to resin.
Right.
Because
it's soft. It's not like a hard, like, because I know like people have used M&Ms and roses and stuff like that, but yeah.
And like that's where I'm super obsessed with what I put in there, making sure that like, because in my mind I'm like, it has to be as balanced as possible, or people are going to ask me if it's balanced. So I try really hard to make sure that most of what gets put in there is acrylic base. But this one, like, I don't care. It's popcorn. It's cool, and it's adorable, kind of like her little face when I showed her. Man, yeah. So the biggest project is the one I'm working on right now, because it's trying to keep them all consistent, and then again, like trying to characterize somebody in a dice is, that to me is the bigger challenge there, of like, okay, this, like a couple of them, like this one, one of our wizards, she's really sweet, like lots of purple moon energy type of vibe I get off of her, and so like I've got this one for her. This is her advantage dice. Like, it's very pretty, but like, so that some of it's just personality that I was getting off of people, and then like the gold dice that I showed earlier, he's a golden dragonborn. So yeah, it's gold. But like that for me is the bigger undertaking, is like the creative aspect of like, okay, that's hard. Whereas like once I figure out what color I'm doing it, then I'm confident now that I won't make squishy dice.
We only have a couple minutes left, but what's next on the horizon for you guys? Like something you're working on, something you want to work on? Like you've already done some amazing things, but like what's next? Gil.
I want to work in the isotopes, the safe to handle isotopes of radioactive metals.
Okay.
I don't know if that's possible. I have no idea, but I think it would be really cool to, again, I don't know if by reheating it up into the forge, if it causes it to become radioactive again. I don't think that's how it works, but I'm curious to see if that is possible. Like, I know you can buy little tiny pellets of plutonium that are already spent on, like, I think you can buy them on Amazon. I'm like, if I could buy a large in a piece.
Okay.
Again, it's just like, why not, right? I don't know if I'm allowed to say, because I'm technically under NDA, but I'll just say it anyway, because it's but platinum. Platinum. It is so expensive. It is so stupid expensive. Just the whole process to try to work that down. But it's still a process, and I'm trying to figure it out, and we'll see if it works. If it's great, but if it doesn't, then that's a lot of money down the drain.
So we got Half-Life dice and NDA dice.
Yeah. Rose, what about you?
I mean, it's probably one for Gil, but I saw someone asking for uranium dice the other day.
Ooh.
Ooh.
There you
I mean,
go.
that's definitely not for me. I do have an order in for a whole new set of masters from the Blue Mimic. Glenn and Rachel and the team are going to print me a new set with a new font and logos, because that's new. I never settled on logos before. I don't actually have anything major planned, or I suppose it's more as a specific timeline. I've been trying to get a factory to make a set of dice all year, and it's taking its time. I didn't realize it would take this long to try and get a factory to produce a set of dice, but you know, that's how these things go, I guess. But whatever people throw at me, I've got my commissions open. So if people want things, they can just throw ideas at me and we can see what we can create together.
I love that. So there you go, chat. Like commissions.
I have an idea.
Oh gosh.
So when I work my the forged layer of metal comes off, known as scale. It's basically like an oxidized layer. If I could possibly get little tiny flicks in there,
That would be pretty.
I think that would look nice. We'll talk.
Yep.
Do it.
There we go.
All the meteorite you didn't use.
Yeah, all the meteorite. Just
Oh
put it
my
in resin.
God.
That'll work.
Nice.
Holy crap! Yeah,
That's
I've got
what I
dust.
salvage it.
I've got meteorite dust.
You're
Salvage it.
welcome.
We could make real galaxy dice.
Now we've now had like several projects have emerged on this show. We've had people.
2021, take that.
We're bringing people together here at the rollout. That's what we do.
Yeah.
It's because when you get creatives in the same room, magic happens. And Taryn, obviously you're working on the Wizards dice, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're looking to probably start selling, but what is
Yeah.
what is next for you?
Well, one of the things is getting a second master set because I've been working on a logo, and I got to decide on a name that I want to, because like I'm not gonna just go like use like these are Valruk stat. No, I'm gonna come up with something cooler that's easier to say and spell for people. So that's the thing. Getting another like I love my font, so I'm gonna do something like with a logo for that, and hopefully get a website at some point up and running. Find a way. I don't really want to use like Facebook stuff works really well. People do that all the time, auction houses and all that jazz. But I would like to get an Instagram set up for my dice and a website set up for them. And like, so that's me as far as my dice making goes, is like trying to get up and going where I can take commissions and also do batches, because I would like this to become a part-time, at least, income source for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to make monies, but also like what I do. It's crazy. It's like I want to like enjoy my job and also it's weird. It's like happiness is a thing.
I would never go back to having a normal job.
I hope to get the hashtag goals. Like I want to do that. Like,
Yeah. And that's why we do what we do in the creative fields. We find ways to make it work. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I have learned so much. I'm so excited now about space dice. Like, I will be, Rose, your stuff sells out so fast. I'm going to be on your website. Like when those go up for sale, I'm like, refresh.
Reserved.
Refresh.
Right.
oh my gosh, custom dice. Like okay, like custom dice sale. Like all of the dice makers. Like if you get to a certain point, your stuff gone in like hours.
Oh,
like you
no,
open
her
the
stuff
shop,
is gone in minutes.
Sometimes, yeah.
It's just crazy. Like it's, I mean, it like as somebody buying them, it's crazy. But then like also just somebody even watching because I didn't always have the money to do that. Like watching is just like, oh my gosh, like it's open, it's closed, and I'm like, wow, I need to get into this.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, guys in chat. Please follow them on all of the social medias. Please, when they have stuff for sale, support them. You know, this amazing community. We'll be back next week when it's a new year.
I know. We got new stuff for you guys.
Yes, we've got some really great shows. Next week, we're going to be doing a yay or nay of 2020. We're going to have some pretty great guests doing that. So things we loved and hated in the tabletop gaming world.
Okay.
Tabletop gaming world. Let me preface that.
Brain hurty.
Yeah. And then Genevieve, we've got
we got chat. We got chat. We do have a chat, but we also have a raffle. And that code word is extra super special tonight. It is raffle. You type raffle in the chat to enter. And it's another game for y'all. So remember, type in raffle in the chat to enter, and then stay to the beginnings of Realms of Ukador, which is up in
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
See whether or not
It's only
Solo
been a
kills them.
year. We're only closing out a year of the show, and you'd think
Yeah.
you'd think I'd got it, but
It's
you
almost
know.
like things are ending tonight.
I know. All right, guys. Well, we will see you next week, and thanks for joining us. And
Yes, thank you. Good night, guys. See you next year.
Night.